Hey there, I'm Redmond from Overseas Ghost. The story I'm sharing today comes from South Korea. It takes place in the late 2000s on the outskirts of Seoul, when a young couple had just settled into a modest semi-basement home. Not long after moving in, a series of unusual disturbances and recurring nighttime problems began inside the house. What follows is the period when those experiences first started to shape their everyday lives. With that setting in place, let's begin the story. This story goes back to 2008. I had just gotten married and was looking for our first home on the western outskirts of Seoul. At the time, I didn't even have a decent job. Since I had very little money saved, finding even a cheap place with monthly rent was difficult. With the deposit money I had, I could only afford a rooftop room or a semi-basement unit, and not in a new building, but in completely run-down older houses. In my bachelor days, I didn't really know the value of money. I lived with the mindset of, if I have it, great. If not, whatever. To this day, I feel both grateful and sorry to my wife, who married me trusting only in our love. Now I work hard and live proudly as the head of our household. Back then, wandering around looking for a home was exhausting. We looked at basements with absolutely no sunlight and rooftop rooms made of flimsy panels, realizing the cold reality of our situation for the first time. We returned to my in-laws' house for dinner, feeling completely drained. Just then, we got a call. It was a real estate agent. "There's one property I want to show you right now. If you have time, can you come take a look?" We hurried over to see the room, bringing my mother-in-law along. The house was located at the very end of a deep alleyway. It was a semi-basement unit in a multi-family villa. Surprisingly, the living room and main bedroom were quite spacious, and it had a small extra room and a bathroom. After seeing the place, both my mother-in-law and I were completely satisfied. On top of that, it was very close to my in-laws' house. Worried someone else might snatch it up, we went to the real estate office with the landlord the very next day and signed the contract immediately. We set a date to move in 2 weeks later. Walking home, I thought, if I work hard, opportunities like this really do come. My heart felt light that evening. But that night, my sleep was very restless. I don't remember the exact details, but I had a dream that felt ominous, like something was fishy. Anyway, I brushed it off as no big deal and just waited for moving day. 2 weeks passed and we moved in without incident. My wife and I spent our first night in our newlywed home. Since it was our first night, we couldn't fall asleep easily and stayed awake until dawn talking about this and that. Suddenly, we heard the shouting voice of a middle-aged woman. "Thief! Thief!" It sounded as if someone was shouting inside the same room. It was that close. Since the house was at the end of a remote alleyway, I was a bit scared too. I was worried about what might be happening outside, but I didn't dare go out, afraid of encountering something dangerous. I had a duty to protect the baby growing in my wife's womb. So, guarding my frightened wife's side, I stayed up all night on our first day. For about a week after that, we lived comfortably. But suddenly one day, my wife spoke up. "Honey, I think this house is a bit strange." I tried to comfort her. "Getting a house like this for that deposit is really lucky. You're just sensitive because of that thief incident on the first night." But I didn't realize then that my wife had an intuition I lacked. She told me that on that first day, after I went to work, she asked the landlord about the noise, mentioning the thief shouting and remarking that the soundproofing seemed poor, asking if there were other basement units nearby besides ours. He hesitated a bit, then admitted there was one more unit in the back. However, he claimed no one lived in that back house. After work, while we were eating dinner, she told me about the things she had been experiencing. She said that in the 10 or so days we had lived there, she had nightmares every single night without fail. When she was alone, she felt someone watching her, or she would catch a glimpse of something passing by quickly. It wasn't once or twice, it happened many times. Even though she complained, I still brushed it off, saying, "Where can you find a house without a history for this price?" But truthfully, I trusted my wife. Even when we were dating, her intuition had always been exceptional. It was just that our financial situation was too difficult to argue about it. A few months later, my wife gave birth. One day, I was at home alone, washing up and getting ready to go to the hospital after work. That was when I saw it. I am someone who has never experienced sleep paralysis or seen ghosts before in my life. I finished getting ready and turned off the living room light to leave. I realized I had forgotten to close the main bedroom door, so I went back inside. In the corner of the main bedroom, there was something vaguely yet clearly visible, a human-shaped form draped in black cloth just standing there. It felt like I had been hit hard on the back of the head. For the first time in my life, I felt a true, chilling eeriness. I rushed out of the house and ran all the way to the bus stop, looking only straight ahead. When I finally met my wife at the hospital, tears poured down my face. I was scared, and I felt so sorry for her. Seeing my tears, my wife tried to comfort me, joking, "Are you that happy to see your handsome son?" A day or two later, I had a dream. In the dream, I was trying to smoke. I opened a cigarette pack to take one out, when suddenly a hand reached in and snatched several cigarettes. Surprised, I cursed and turned my head sharply. A woman with permed, greasy black hair, white makeup, and bright red lips was glaring at me. I got angry and asked her why she took them. The woman shouted back at me, her voice even louder than mine, "That ghost is smoking." As she said that, she looked to the side, so my gaze naturally followed. The scene shifted to my house's main bedroom. Beyond the bedroom window, there was a wall. On that wall, the ghost of a young woman in white mourning clothes was looking down, glaring with truly terrifying eyes. I screamed and jumped up, turning on the light immediately. Fortunately, the window was closed. I tried to dismiss it as a simple nightmare, and for a few months our family lived relatively well without incident. But from a certain day on, my wife started becoming overly sensitive again. "Honey, listen carefully. I think there's not just one ghost. There are many, and they are outside too." Things got worse. While I was sleeping, I suddenly heard an old woman's voice shouting, "Who are you? Come with me." I jolted awake to see my wife lying there with her eyes wide open, glaring at me. That was the second time I felt that chilling horror. It reminded me of the dream I'd had. After that, we argued a lot. No, we fought every single day. I was pushing my wife toward postpartum depression, and she was having an incredibly hard time. I was becoming exhausted day by day. Thinking back now, I believe I neglected her. Then one day, after a severe fight, my wife took the baby and left for her parents' house crying. With a heavy heart, thinking I should just drink soju alone, I went to the supermarket. On the way, I ran into a shop owner I knew from the neighborhood. We greeted each other and talked about this and that, and he suggested we have a drink, so I invited him to my house. I hadn't known it before, but his house was very close, in the same alley. I felt gloomy being alone in the empty house, and I wanted to get some advice from him as a mentor and someone older and wiser. But the moment we entered the front door, he frowned. I wondered why, but I hurriedly set up a table for drinks. When I tried to sit down, he asked to switch seats with me. I told him I had given him the seat of honor purposely, but he insisted it was okay and said he wanted to sit with his back to the main bedroom. Sensing something strange, I asked him why, but he didn't answer at first. After we clinked glasses a few times and the alcohol started flowing, he finally opened his mouth. "Do you believe in ghosts?" He continued. Actually, I don't talk about this much because people might call me crazy, but those things are gathered in your main bedroom. He paused and asked, by any chance, weren't there talismans or something like that above the main bedroom door? If there were, did you remove them? I told him that after moving in, I found the talismans unpleasant and creepy, so I had removed them all from the rooms and the bathroom. When I told him that, he sighed deeply. Then I found out why he had frowned when we entered the front door. He said he felt a very bad energy the moment he saw the talisman above the front door. Honestly, I had no idea there was even a talisman above the front door. I don't remember exactly, but he said the talisman attached there was the specific kind shamans use during exorcism rituals to seal a place. Hearing words like ghosts, vengeful spirits, and shamans, I completely gave up on that house. I asked him again, so what is in the main bedroom? He said that in the main bedroom alone, he could see one man, one woman, and an old woman. Only then did I realize that what I had dreamed and what my wife had seen were not ordinary hallucinations. He told me the energy there was too evil, and if we continued living there, it would ruin our health. Thinking, I guess I experience all sorts of things in this life, I went to the real estate agency the next day and put the house up for rent. After that, through an acquaintance, I found a good job in the provinces. I lived as a goose father, working away from my family to earn money for about a year. With the money I saved through much difficulty, I eventually got a small apartment in the countryside, and the whole family reunited. Now one more child has been added to our family, and we are living well together. Not long ago, driving the car I bought recently, I stopped by my in-laws' house and left the kids there. There was a butcher shop we used to frequent nearby. While eating meat with my wife there, the story of that basement room came up. Suddenly I became very curious and really wanted to go see it once more. There were so many bad and good memories intertwined in that place. Parking the car in the alley, I said to my wife, "We've really come a long way, haven't we?" Hearing that, my wife shed tears. When we finally arrived in front of that basement room, we hugged each other and cried. It seemed like someone else was living there now. Seeing a stroller in front of the door, it looked like another newlywed couple had moved in. A week ago, there was a high school alumni gathering. In the evening, all the alumni gathered together, happily having dinner and reminiscing about our high school days. The school we attended was located in the mountains, so amongst ourselves, we always used to say it would be really fun if they filmed a horror movie there. Naturally, the topic turned to scary stories. That was when a friend, let's call him Minsak, told a scary story that his actual older brother had experienced. I'll tell you that story now. At the time of the incident, Minsak was a high school sophomore, 18 years old, and his older brother was 22. They lived in an apartment with their parents, 4 people together. That apartment complex had 2 entrances, a main gate and a back gate. Usually, apartment complexes have one playground, right? This one had a playground located very close to the back gate. Since Minsak's building was much closer to the back gate than the main one, they mostly used the rear entrance. It was about a 5-minute walk from the back gate to their unit. Let me describe the playground on the back gate side a bit. These days, newly built apartments have soft flooring made of urethane or epoxy, right? But until about 16 years ago, most playgrounds had sand spread on the ground. This one was like that. On the sand floor, there was just a seesaw and a slide. Perhaps because it was an older complex, there were no street lights at all at that playground, so at night it was pitch black. Anyway, to get home through the back gate, you had to cross that playground. One day, Minsak's older brother was on his way home after finishing his university final exams. He had been drinking with friends until late. The time was 1 a.m. Because it was so late, the brother planned to enter through the main gate where there were streetlights and a security guard post. But he was too tired from drinking, So when he took a taxi, he decided to just get off at the back gate to shorten the walk. He wanted to sober up a bit, if just a little, so he asked the driver to drop him there. It was around early June. Most of the lights in the apartments were off because it was early morning. Besides the sound of his own footsteps, there was no other noise. It was a very quiet night. The playground had no lights, so looking at it was a bit scary. The brother felt an inexplicable fear as he approached it. Thinking it must be just the alcohol, he started crossing the playground. That was when he clearly heard the sound of children playing. Since it was 1 a.m., he thought he must have heard wrong and was about to pass by, but the sound of children persisted. Just in case, he looked toward the center of the playground. In the pitch-black darkness, 5 children were playing. Strangely, on that sand floor, the kids were jumping rope, group jumping rope. One person on each side held the long rope and turned it, and 3 kids in the middle were jumping up and down. And the kids started singing a song. "Fox, fox, what are you doing? Eating a meal, lazy bones." You know that song, right? They were singing that specific childhood game song. The brother thought it made no sense no matter how he looked at it. It was impossible for kids to be playing jumping rope there at that hour, and there wasn't a single person around who looked like a parent or guardian. He concluded he must be hallucinating because he was drunk. He rubbed his eyes and looked toward the kids again. Suddenly, the singing stopped. One child, looking directly at the brother, said to the others, "Fox, fox, what are you doing? Eating a meal. Hey, that man over there is looking at us. Is it that person?" Hearing that, the brother was so terrified that he rushed home in a panic. He couldn't even wash up and spent the night shivering in his bed. The next morning, he told his family what he had seen and heard. They just said, "What on earth are you talking about?" His parents told him to drink in moderation, asking if he had dreamed it because he was so drunk. Since it was such an unbelievable situation, the brother doubted himself, thinking, "I really must have seen it wrong because of the alcohol," and let it go. A week later, vacation started, and the brother began a part-time job. He finished work around midnight and was returning home. Having completely forgotten the incident from the week before, he entered through the back gate and began crossing the playground again. The exact same situation happened. This time, even though the brother was completely sober, in the darkness, the kids were singing that "Fox, fox, what are you doing" song while jumping rope. The moment he made eye contact with one child, they stopped singing again. Isn't that person? He clearly heard it. Having experienced the same thing twice and hearing "Isn't that person" each time, he was terrified. He wondered if there was something wrong with him or if they were coming for him. He told his parents about the incident again. Later, the brother's mother, Minsok's mom, was chatting with a close neighbor in the apartment complex and ended up mentioning what her son had seen. The neighbor suddenly jumped in surprise as if hearing something unbelievable. "Really? You said 5 kids?" When asked why she was so shocked, the neighbor told her the story. The apartment where Minsok's family lived was an old complex, about 20 years old. 5 years before Minsok's family moved in, a kidnapping and murder incident had occurred there. 5 second-grade elementary school students had been kidnapped, and all of them were murdered. Those 5 victims all lived in the same apartment building, and their parents knew each other well enough to socialize. The 5 kids always gathered and played in that complex. When 5 children from one apartment were kidnapped and murdered all at once, the whole neighborhood was turned upside down. They eventually caught the criminal. It was a 22-year-old young man living in that very apartment complex. After the incident, the parents all moved away. The remaining residents buried the story, afraid that property prices would drop if people knew. When Minsok's brother heard that story from his mother, he couldn't help but get chills. It wasn't just that the number of ghost children he saw was exactly 5. It was the fact that the murderer at the time was a 22-year-old male. Minsok's brother was exactly 22 years old that year. The spirits of those kids, seeing the brother, were whispering, "Is it that person?" simply because they were still afraid of the 22-year-old man who had killed them. Terrified, the brother enlisted in the military right after experiencing that incident to get away from there. Now, 16 years later, he is married and living well. However, whenever he sees a playground covered in sand, the memory of that time comes back to him vividly. Thank you for joining me for this story. Oversea Ghost is a new channel, and I'm still finding my way. If you have feedback, suggestions for future topics, or a local legend from your own corner of the world, please share it in the comments below. Your input is what will help this channel grow and improve. If you enjoyed this journey into the unexplained, please help support the channel by liking this video, subscribing, and sharing it with someone who loves a good mystery. It truly makes all the difference. Until next time, this is Redmond, signing off. Stay curious and take care.